Hey, what's up, beautiful people? It is Tia Talks with your girl, Sugar Free Tea. And today we have a super duper dope guest that, first off, let me say that the individual that you are about to hear from right now, we've been having some really great conversations, right? And you guys know that this is all about being thought provoking. And when I tell you that she has been very implemental in asking me questions that I've never asked myself, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. We got to talk like for real, for real, for real, for real. So I've invited her to be a guest, right? On Tia Talks. I'm so excited to share her with you all, right? Because, well, we have another one of those topics that affect us, right? In our lives, as a community, as a whole. And basically that topic today is, so why we not rich yet? Like, like I don't even know a title for this, right? But that's basically how I feel about it. So why we not rich yet? Like, what's the reason? Why is it that the Black community doesn't have access to capital, right? And so today we're going to kind of just take that deep dive into figuring it out, right? Just having a conversation about it. You guys know I love just having an open and honest conversation with all of those who are in front of me. And again, we're just going to see where it goes, right? We're going to talk about access to wealth. What is wealth, right? We're going to talk about, some barriers, right? Some challenges that we face as a community, financial literacy. What is that, right? What does that actually mean? Mindset. Where's our mindset at? So again, this is going to be fun. I don't want to talk too much because, I could go off on a rant, but want to introduce you to a really good friend of mine. Known her for, oh gosh, it's been at least double digits that we've known each other. Just recently connected again. Definitely looking forward to more of these conversations because they are thought provoking, right? And these are some of the things that we don't say that we probably need to say out loud, right? And so again, I'll kind of preface it with, so why Black people not rich yet? Like, where our money at? Right. And so Jeanette, please go ahead. Yo, who are you? Where you from? What you doing in the streets?
Hello everyone. Tia, thank you for having me on Tia Talks. My name is Jeanette. And yeah, we've known each other for double digits. And I too would like to know where is the wealth in our community? And why is it that we are behind the eight ball when it comes to being economically free, when it comes to being financially literate, when it comes to having um, the savings, right? The 401ks, the TIAAs, the IRAs, the Roths, like, why is it that when it comes to these areas of growth, of progression in our community, we're last?
Mhm. Let me tell you something. One thing that I learned, right, is that the difference between where you are and where you want to be is the same thing, right? And basically what that is the information that you know and what you implement. That's it. That is the thing, right? So with this conversation comes, okay, well, like, yo, where the money at? It's, well, what do we know and what do we implement, right? And there are a lot of things that, one, we don't know, and also that we don't implement. And the question becomes, well, why don't we implement these things? And why don't we know? Like, we have all of this access to education, yet we're still really behind when it comes to how to utilize different aspects of making your money make money, right? You brought up a very good point in saving, right? We've been kind of conditioned to save, 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 right? What we haven't been taught really to do is invest, 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 invest. And so we spend
Mhm.
a lot of our time saving money and not enough of our time investing money so that our money does make money and it works for us and we don't have to work for it. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I think it's um, I think it's trifold. Because when you live in communities that are underbanked, right, absence, void of these financial institutions, yet overfilled with ATMs,
Right.
which charge you, right, to withdraw your money.
Right.
I think that what these financial institutions are saying out loud is that we are not worth the investment. The government, the economy, capitalism, society, I feel are all speaking a universal language, in that to bet on Black
Oh, so
is
what?
a loss,
The bet on Black is what?
is a loss,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And then when you start delving deeper into that, it's not just about the wealth, but in addition to that, it's the health,
Right.
right? And so when you don't have these equitable institutions of healthcare management, again, the government, society ask, why are we investing into this community?
Hmm.
And then lastly, as you stated earlier, the education. And so when you don't have schools that are producing college graduate students from that neighborhood, when you don't have schools that have a regulated standard core curriculum,
Right.
and you have this influx of students who are not graduating on their grade level, who are under the conditions of social promotion, who are living in these impoverished communities, I feel like all three of these factors affect uh, one person in a household, which then affects the entire household of obtaining, maintaining, and being able to rotate that same dollar within that household.
Okay, let's go back real quick. Historical barriers, right? Lasting effects of, systemic racism, redlining, discriminatory practices, and things like that, right? Which have prevented families from building generational wealth. Now, when it comes to things like that, at this point in time now, is it just an excuse, or is it, where are we with that? Do you think like, yo, we beyond this, and is forget, not to say forget history, but all right, come on, we way more developed now to know better, to do better? Or is it, oh, but it really is our history, and it really is what we went through, and our ancestors, dealt with this, that, and the third. What is it? What does that look like for you?
I think that the trajectory of our rise in politics, in entrepreneurship, in sports, um, in home ownership. Again, when you look at these areas in comparison to other races, we still fall so far behind.
Right.
And one, I think it has a lot to do with representation. And so when you have a Congress, right, when you have a boardroom, when you have a conglomerate of individuals that do not look like us, that cannot speak for us, that do not have an iota of hope for us, then our voice gets lost when it's time to talk about budgets, when it's time to talk about the allocation of funds, when it's time to have these candid conversations about what resources are for us, what resources can we pump back into these communities. I
Specifically for us.
right. I feel that that conversation oftentimes doesn't reach us because we're not sitting on these boards. We're not the one who's a part of legislation. And so, unfortunately, yes, we've made strides in the achievement of wealth, but the numbers are so small that they're almost insignificant. So, when you speak on history, it definitely has repeated itself, but I feel like now it's far more prevalent because we do not have generational wealth. So that dollar is not in circulation for a generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that stifles us significantly. Is that a means for us to ask the government for a bailout?
You know what's funny? It's not funny, but we truly don't recognize how much we've been trained to work, right? Like go to school, get good grades, get a degree, right? Or, graduate from high school, go to college, get a degree, work 40 years, retire, right? That's the story that has been told over and over and over and over for generations, right? That is the story that people still believe. And nowhere in that story does it say attain wealth. It's always get a good job and get those benefits, right? Get a good job and get those benefits. And so I tend to believe most people, right, will believe in, let's say 5-day work week, right? So you got work Monday, work Tuesday, work Wednesday, work Thursday, work Friday, get paid. Work Monday, work Tuesday, work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, get paid. Whereas other cultures, other ethnicities, they believe in do some work, get paid, let's get paid, let's get this money, let's get paid. Do some work, right? Put the work in, put the effort in, get paid, get paid, get paid, get paid. So the mindset behind assets, what it looks like, accumulation of wealth, it starts in the mind with how we even think about how to even get money, right? Like, what is our way of actually accumulating wealth, right? Is it just going to work and getting paid? Like, oh, that's that sure money. I know I got that sure money coming in. Or is it, yo, let me figure out a way to, one, accumulate assets, right, in a short period of time and have my money make money for me. And my money is doing the work because we overworked and underpaid, most of us. What's your thoughts on that?
Uh, I agree with that. The narrative has been to get a job, get a good job, right? Which is what is considered with benefits. But I also think that what is the debt ratio to income?
Mhm.
And that has a major impact on, again, not only being able to save, but actually allowing that dollar to circulate within that household multiple times before it is then sent back out, right? When you look at the Jewish community, that $1 circulates 12 times
Hmm.
before it leaves that neighborhood, before it leaves that community. And unfortunately, with us, that $1 only circulates once.
Hmm.
So we're doing far
Circulate?
more spending.
That's it. Does it circulate?
It circulates one time. That's it. In our households. So we're doing far more spending than saving, right? And then unfortunately, our debt ratio supersedes our yearly income.
And see, that's another thing that people don't understand. When people look at the word debt, they think that debt is a terrible thing. But there are ways to be able to use debt to create wealth as well.
Absolutely.
And again, that, like we said, that kind of goes back into that education and finding the right resources and even sometimes putting yourself in the right environment, right? I'll say this really quickly because I know for me, I think of things and then they'll disappear and they'll be going into the abyss forever. So I had a mentor, right? And my mentor basically said, if you want to know how wealthy people become wealthy, like make a list of the things that they do, right? If you want to know, well, basically it's like, if you want to know what wealthy people do what they do, right? Find out what they do and do that. If you want to know what poor people do, right? Find out what they do and do the opposite of that, right? So kind of
Mm,
necessarily early on, but in the beginning of me trying to figure out like, all right, where's my financial literacy at? What do I really know? How much information do I really have? It was quite clear that it's really easy to make a list, right? And
mhm,
what's out there, right? Public knowledge, what's out there is this idea of, okay, rich people, and not to say it like that, but rich people, right? They read a bunch of books. Poor
true.
people, they watch a bunch of TV, right? Rich people, they will put themselves in an environment where they're getting, I know. You guys know, let me tell you something. I guarantee you, in probably every single episode that we show, there's going to be a child running through. Like, that's going to be my thing. If you don't see a child running through, something is wrong. Right. But yeah, like this idea of, you want to know what rich people do? Find out and do what they do, follow what they do, right? Let them copy the right cat is basically what I was told, right? And so you think of these circumstances that we have, our environment, what we're around, our mindset, and how much really of a role that plays, right? I wanted to talk a little bit too about wage gaps, right? And employment discrimination. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I think that the wage gap, and that's such a broad topic because that involves level of education, experience, opportunity, racial biases. Um, it's basically this infrastructure that is more geared towards the company being represented through candidates who have documentation of accomplishing their education, therefore leaving other people or other individuals um, out of that opportunity. I also think that when it comes to the wage gaps, again, it goes back to investment,
Right.
right? Are these companies willing to invest in people from our communities? They could just look at your resume, see your address,
Oh,
and discredit you based on that alone, no matter how many OSHA compliances or HR protocols that the government tries to level the playing field, these companies will always find a loophole to
mhm.
discount you from that.
There used to be a saying, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was true, right? I mean, if enough noise gets made about something, it's usually because there's some truth behind it. And they used to say that when they were looking at our resumes, right? Depending on your name, they were able to tell, oh,
Absolutely.
this is a quick way. Now, nope, no thanks. Next.
Absolutely. And they still do that.
It's so funny because I was very strategic with that, because that was information that was coming up when I decided to like have a family. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember like this was going on. What am I going to name my children? Because I didn't even want to, I was so fearful to find out if that was even true that I didn't want to, like, we're not taking no chances with this. In case it is true, we're not going to take no chances. And although somebody might want me to call you Alexis, that's not what your name's. We're not going there. No offense to the Alexises.
Right, 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 right.
There's an era of children whose names are significant to sometimes what was in their environment, to brands, right, associated with specific brands, whether it's a car brand, whether it's a alcoholic beverage brand, whatever it is, these names are associated with that. And I guess at the time, what we didn't realize was how they can even use, or the powers that be can use names to say, oh, I know who you are. At least I think I know who you are. Boop, X you off the list right away. So that's crazy to me.
Well, a lot of these companies also too have to meet their quotas when it comes to the DEI.
Hmm.
And so they can look at a resume and be able to see like, oh, okay, this person is of, Indian descent or Middle Eastern, right? So if we hire 4 people who are from that cultural background, who are from that race,
You've met
then
it.
we've met our quota,
That's crazy.
right? It's unfortunate.
Right.
Um, what are your thoughts on the wage gap?
I think that when it comes to wage gap, there's this idea of what is my time actually worth? And for me, there's a wage gap because so many people don't understand what their value is, and somebody else is always placing the value on them, right? I go work for X company is going to say, no, this is what you're worth. And I'm going to say, oh, okay, yeah. Why? Because I want that job, right? I want that position.
Absolutely.
So we're very accepting of what other companies, right, determine what our worth is about. Whereas, let's say for the business owner, right, the business owner usually decides what their value is. There isn't a value placed on them; they place the value on themselves, right? So, for instance,
Correct.
there was a young gentleman, and I think he sold his book. Never first time author, right? And he sold his book for like $99. People were like, I don't even know you. Why would? And he's like, this is you don't have to buy it. There's a person
Right.
here who's going to purchase my book for $99, and that's the person who I want to speak to, right? If keep it moving, then if you don't want to buy my $99 book, go ahead and keep it moving. And I think that when it comes to the wage gap, right? It's first off, it's enough abundance out there for everybody, right?
Agreed.
Abundance is basically like it's our birthright, right? When I think about even when I first asked you about like the histories and things like that, we can go back in history, we can make excuses, right? But we have to have the ability to be able to create and to be able to believe. I think once that we are able to believe and create, I think that's kind of where it starts for me. Like we have to believe that we can be one of the wealthiest cultures, right? Right now, the world knows us as spenders, right? But we
Right. Exactly.
have to believe that we can be one of the wealthiest cultures. And so, again, when it comes to like the wage gap, yeah, experience definitely plays a role, but it's our acceptance of it. I think if we weren't so easily acceptable of it, things would change. But because we know, or the powers that be kind of know, like, hey, these people, they need this job. They got families. They need to eat, right? There's desperation out there, right? There's that scarcity mindset that they gotta grit grind, right? Like I gotta
Right.
grit
Right.
grind, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta work 40 hours. You got people out here working 80 hours.
That's true. Working 2 and 3 jobs too.
They don't make enough for one from one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
a lot of people think that it is hard or impossible to create wealth. And again, is really not. It goes back to that education for me. And so when I think of the wage gap, I'm just like, it's just made up, but does it exist? Absolutely. Is there anything that we can do to change it? Well, not until we start recognizing our own worth. And until we start recognizing our own worth, because you can always, let's say if you go out and you get the job, you can always negotiate, right? There's an option on the table to negotiate what you're worth. Now they may not agree, right, to what your numbers. You might say, oh,
Okay.
I'm worth 6 figures. And they might say, no, absolutely not. Okay, well, you can choose to accept that or go to the next company and try your luck with the next company. See, a lot of times we feel like we're running out of options.
And so we take what's offered.
Right then and there, we take what's offered. And it's like, well, listen, I got to do what I got to do. I ain't got time for this. I got a family to.
Okay.
And so I think, like I said, that desperation, it just comes from that desperation and having to choose right now. When you have limitations, you have to make a choice right then and there. Right? It's the difference between a choice and it's the difference between like a decision, right? A choice,
Mm,
here are your options. All right, choose, pick one. A decision is, I'm going to have this, get that, figure out this. Like there is no possibility of not attaining this. That's the difference between a decision and an option. Option is like, choose one. It's real lackadaisical. It's like, whatever. You get what you get. No, a decision is coming from you, from within. Is no, what are you going to attain? What are you going to go after? So I don't know. That I don't know. That's a really good question when it comes to wage gap, because it's like, is it something that could really be fixed? And it's like, I don't really think so, because somebody else is going to always be in charge of that.
See, I think it's heavily influenced by the government, right? And there is, believe it or not, we may not see it, but there is a profit margin to be made when you can keep a particular group of people right above poverty line.
Mm,
So if I were to play the devil's advocate, right? I'm the government, and let's say I am focusing on, I don't know, the Bronx,
right.
right? I have this group of people, black and brown. Well, now the Bronx is heavily gentrified, right? But let's say I'm just focusing on this large group of people, black and brown people. There's a profit margin to be made because if I can keep them right above poverty line, I
Mm,
can then ask Washington, Albany for additional funding for governmental programs.
right.
And
Mm,
these programs will guarantee that you cannot exceed a certain income, that you cannot have a two-parent home
right.
making over a median income, because then that will automatically disqualify you
Programs and
from
service.
receiving these government programs, from this governmental assistance.
Mm,
A lot of people think that Fiorella LaGuardia was for the people. A
mm,
lot of people have that misconception. But when he signed that bill for, as we come to know it being called welfare, that was not designed for
mm,
us. Welfare was designed for the women who were at home, Polish women particularly,
right.
because a lot of their husbands, right? So it was predominantly for these immigrants that were coming here for work,
Mm,
not us, but for these women who were at home taking care of their kids and losing their husbands to construction accidents,
right.
losing their husbands to polio, losing their husbands to all of these diseases that were coming about, but we didn't have any cures for them.
Mhm.
He is the one who then created this governmental assistance, wherein as long as you met this eligibility, you were then automatically guaranteed to have this additional supplemental, I wouldn't even call it income,
Hmm.
right? Literally, it's credit on paper. That's what it is, right? And the government gets to mark you off as a recipient and still go back to Albany, still go back to Washington, D.C., and say, hey, look, it works, right? And I can go on and on about that because the Jewish community uses it as well.
Mm,
And so that's how they're able to retain a lot of their manual labor income in that household and have that $1 circulate 12 times.
mm,
So I think that it's all about access. Do we have access to wealth?
mm. And that's the question. Do we have access? And see, what I find is usually when it comes to like that gap, you know how we want our money to compound? What is actually happening is that that gap is compounding, right? So
Mm,
no matter what, it does limit the ability, right, to be able to do those things, invest in property, right? Remember, I was kind of talking about, hey, what are our tools? What are our resources? How do we make our money work for us? Well, don't just focus on saving, right? Because you have this idea, and I know I'm jumping ship really quickly, but I want to add this in.
that's fine.
There's this idea because you mentioned banks too. I wish I knew the statistic. I think it was 70 million let's just say 70 million, right?
Okay.
70 million of our dollars, and I'll just say, let's say there's one bank, right? 70 million of our dollars are in this bank, but then they only want to let us borrow 5,000. But
Right.
we're giving this bank business and they only want to give us $5,000 and then charge us an interest rate because they know that interest, right? That's what they do, that compounding. See, they understand what compounding
Right.
is. We don't understand what compounding interest is. The only way we know what compounding is like I said, in that gap, right? So the gap compounds over time, limiting the ability to invest in property, into retirement funds, into any other assets that kind of grow wealth. So I kind of just wanted to throw that out there really quickly because it is just amazing to me how everyone seems to understand our money but us. Everybody understands it but us. And it really makes me wonder, like, how did we become the builders of this society, right? But then at the same time, after we built it, I don't want to say but we became the ones who laid down and everybody just walking on us now. Like, where does that happen? Everyone else can come to whatever area, open up a business, send that money back home. We can't even open up businesses in our own communities. Why is that? That criteria that you mentioned, right? Being eligible for certain things. If you don't meet the criteria, sorry.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have
Yeah.
to say no to you. But then look at the criteria that you're creating. I gotta jump through hoops and fire, and I gotta do a cartwheel and a backflip. Oh, and then I need somebody to say exactly what I'm telling you. I need proof that what I'm saying is true. And then I gotta go back 20 years when my credit wasn't right, even though for the last 5, I've been doing the right thing. But you want to go way back there to a time that don't really matter anymore, just to hold me eligible or to say I'm eligible, which then we find out, oh, damn, now I'm not eligible. Child, please.
Well, I also think when I think about like my own personal experiences when it comes to like saving, and understanding debt and the debt to savings ratio and the percentage data statistics when it comes to home ownership and banks, like you stated on the interest rate, banks giving out loans and what that criteria looks like just by itself. Um, my awakening or my rude wake up call to let me know, like, hey, I need you to be a bit more proactive when it comes to like money management was when I worked at a college. I worked at a university and I worked at the bursar's office. And so I remember students coming up to, pay their bill for that semester. What woke me up, rudely woke me up, was when parents would come and not only pay for that semester, but pay for all 4 years.
Mm.
And
And
the shock,
you saying in one like
and with
oh,
one check, like the shock on my face each and every single time that happened let me know that not only did I not come from a household like that, right? But because I didn't meet these criterias when it came to what a household looks like according to the government.
right.
What is our public policy, which was forged out of colonial laws? Let's be very clear about that. I wasn't eligible for financial aid. However, I was eligible for unsubsidized and subsidized loans.
Right. All the time.
So when I see these parents,
Every
who,
time.
so when I see these parents who are coming in and paying for 4 years of college with the option of obtaining a master's degree, that was when I started becoming far more aggressive with saving, far more aggressive with understanding my own dollars spent
Mm.
versus dollars invested, right? And I started seeking out these Black owned companies. I started doing more of my shopping in my neighborhoods instead of going downtown Manhattan, where that dollar does not circulate in our community. It stays where you spend it.
You know what's funny? When I moved to Nevada, I looked for a Black owned bank. There is zero.
Oh, wow.
Zero.
Well,
And
we only have one in New York City, and that's Carver Bank.
that's that is wild to me. And
I
then
agree.
what is the title that they use for? I think it's called, is it MI? Is it MID? MIAD? I'm gonna have to come back and we'll talk about that later. But
Okay.
there's a specific name for minority owned banks. And basically that's like 51% of the stockholder. That's how you know that it's a minority owned bank. And I'm like, damn, even that you have to differentiate. Why it's not just a bank?
Right. Exactly.
Why does it have to be a minority bank? Why isn't it just a bank? And
Right.
like I said, in Nevada, we have zero here. So
Oh,
I encourage
wow.
listeners to look in your state and see how many
Yes.
Black-owned banks you actually have and question why you don't bank with them, right? What are some of the reasons why we don't bank with Black-owned banks? Is it because one, the basically non-existence of them?
Right. Right.
Or is it just this idea of, nah, I don't really trust. I don't know the name
Mm.
brand that I know and that I recognize and that I trust in. Am I going to lose my money with a smaller bank or credit union? We don't even have a Black-owned credit union here. Like
Oh,
either
wow. Wow.
even a credit union as an alternative. We don't have that either. So it's yeah, that joint to me that kind of rocks the boat a little bit. Um, and it really brings attention to the challenges to wealth, you know. Yeah, it's a lot of challenges out there, and it's like, well, how do we overcome them challenge? How do we overcome the challenges? And the idea is, well, just like this, have a conversation, say it out loud.
Agreed. Agreed.
I have too many households that don't speak about money at all.
Absolutely.
How to save it? What does it really mean? Is the dollar losing money? Money in other countries. It is not a conversation that is had. Let me tell you something. My little one, right? I remember we used to come home from school, and there was a time where he said to me, um, do you have your money card? And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, you got your money card? And I'm like, money card? What is he talking about? He's talking about my debit card.
Right.
Like, mine, like that's all we need. Forget cash, not even thinking really about cash. Just, whatever we need, do you got that? Because that's
Right.
right now, I want something from 7-Eleven and I need to know you got your wallet. Do you even know that? Let me
Right.
about the importance of money, child. Let's start that conversation right now.
Absolutely.
So it really starts with having that conversation in the home from young. A lot of people don't want to discuss money at a young age. Like I never knew in my household whether we had money or didn't have money. Or for me, I grew up as a middle, at least what I thought was, middle income family, right? What I'm hearing today is that's pretty much non-existent, nowadays. Now, if I asked my mom for something and she said no, it was just no. It wasn't because I don't got it or I don't have money, or it's
Right.
starting to be the conversation now in households. And if you constantly, or if in a household, the conversation is, I don't got, I don't got, I don't got, I don't got. Well, guess what? That's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be, I don't got, I don't got, I don't got, I don't have, I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. And then you're gonna have a whole family of the have-nots because that's all they hear and that's all they keep repeating. And so even, it goes, that kind of goes into what we were speaking about with mindset, right? Mindset and environment. When you come from a scarcity mindset, well, where does that leave you? We have to go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, right? Again, with that focus on financial literacy from a young age. So anyway, I just wanted to like throw that in there really quickly because that, like I said, the whole thing about banks, you know about most kids know about credit card or a debit card before they know about saving and investing.
Absolutely. I also think that, we grew up playing the game of Monopoly, but like um, when you look at our I don't even want to say counterpartners, but when you look at other races,
Mhm.
they didn't see Monopoly as a game,
Right.
like that there was nothing, happy-go-lucky about playing Monopoly. That was their real life, right? And I think that if maybe our parents or even maybe our educational institutions in our communities would have emphasized it or spent more time instructing us on the disparities of our communities and having more in-depth, candid conversations about what is poverty.
Hmm.
Because not for nothing, I didn't know I grew up poor. I know that now, right? But I didn't know that then, because we could want for nothing, right? Like we had food, all of our basic needs were met. However, those basic needs kept us confined to that zip code. It didn't allow us to flourish outside of that.
Right. Right. It's there was a clip of a little boy, and that's what they were playing. They were playing Monopoly, right? And he was crying in the clip, and they were recording him, and they like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "It's taxes." And they like, "Well, you have to pay your tax." He's like, "This is the worst part of the game." So even at his age, I think he was, I would say no more than probably 10, right? I'll give him 10. He probably was like 8 or 9. But even then, there's an understanding of, yo, why is my money going anywhere else but to me?
Right, right, absolutely.
Like, why is it going anywhere else but to me? Why do I have to give it away to everybody else before it comes to me? So, um,
I think that what I would recommend for some people to consider, and I actually took some notes on this, that when it comes to um, the understanding of wealth and what we can do right now, as of today, everyone can make these decisions that will not only help our community, but also educate your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers. Like, pass this information along so that it doesn't just stop with you.
mhm.
Uh, Empower local people and places. So as you stated earlier, when it comes to like Black owned credit unions or, you know, um, maybe even Black owned financial institutions, Black um, financial advisors, right? Like, seek out these places. Yeah, it should be readily available, such as a Chase, such as a, Citibank, but like, seek out these places, like do the research to seek out these places. Increase local ownership. So entrepreneurship has grown significantly in our communities, especially from like 2016 to 2022. It has increased the net worth has increased by at least 60%. Yet we still fall right above the poverty line. Like, we're kissing the poverty line. Um, Increase local prosperity and opportunities. If you know of a job fair, share it, blast it, post it, right? Those shoes that you want to show everyone that you wore on Saturday and post it on Instagram, that's cool. Do that too. But in the caption, can you
Right.
post about the job fair that's coming, right? Like,
No, what's out there? Where is it?
exactly. If you hear of someone who's looking to, you know, hire someone, or if there's a position available, or if you know of an institution that's trying to recruit, pass that information along.
Mm.
Um, Financial power works when it comes to these local places. If you know of what we used to say growing up was mom and pop shops,
Mhm.
support them, go to them, buy there. If you don't drink the coffee, buy it for someone else.
Right.
Let's just circulate this dollar as many times as we possibly can
Mhm.
before we send it outside of the community. Um, Anchor businesses and jobs to place more of us. Our representation is very, very low. And it's not because we can't perform at a stellar or optimum level. It's because I believe that we sometimes don't have the education
Mhm.
or the experience to match and be able to execute these criteria, unfortunately. And that's not for everyone, but that is I believe that is the stigma, right? When it comes to hiring people of minority. Are you hiring me because there's a quota to be met?
Right.
Or are you and there's an incentive. People don't know that part. There's an incentive for these organizations to hire because that's a whole other conversation.
Already know.
Right?
Listen, y'all
And
got
then,
a whole lot more of Jeanette because, like I said, we just get down and dirty when it comes to like these conversations, and they can go literally for like days, right?
I
Like it's
agree.
not like a quick conversation that we have. We've been building on these conversations, so
Yes.
you guys get like a little sneak peek of what we talk about on a regular basis and trying to figure out, yo, what's the solution to it? What can we do right now, right? That causes impacts, right? What can we do now intentionally, right? To make sure that our dollars are being utilized in a way that brings money back to ourselves. Our dollars are working for us, and it brings it back to community as well in a way to create that generational wealth. So this is just a little hint of Jeanette that you guys are getting. This is just a little hint of what you're getting. So stay tuned definitely for more conversations with Jeanette and I. But this one was a goodie, right?
I agree.
Well, let me keep going. I'm sorry, keep going.
No, 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 it's okay. And lastly, strengthen local communities, right? So we can do that by just simply supporting our local grocery stores, right? You fail to realize that that grocery store that you are supporting, I don't know if it's a fine fare that's in your neighborhood, or maybe a uh
Albertsons,
food town.
food towns,
What?
what, right? Piggly Wiggly, it don't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Will determine.
The the staff that they hire there rely on the dollars that you spend there, right? So, yeah, you may enjoy going downtown Manhattan, or you may enjoy going to the outlet malls, or you may enjoy going to, a completely different county. I get that. But is that dollar being circulated within your community? We have the power of the dollar. Use it. You work so hard for that money. Don't you want to see it come back to you?
I know I do. Well, I was telling you that I started changing my language even when it comes to speaking about money, right? Like I'm like, I don't spend money, I circulate my money,
I
and
like that. I
it's
like that.
I started telling myself I circulate my money, that means it's coming back, right? Because
That's right.
circulate is coming back, it's coming back, it's coming back, it's coming back. Where I spend, it's like, oh damn, it's gone. Udge. Like
And I think that that's what our parents did, right? They spent money, but they did not circulate money.
it's you spoke about a good thing too, even financial advisors, right? There's a lot of mistrust with advisors because there was an era in time where, well, we always have it, people just don't do the right thing, right? And people wind up, the people who you trust for your money, either one, they don't really know the information themselves, right?
Right.
Or or they do know the information, but they know you don't, and that you're just gonna rely on what they say, right? And so there's an idea that when you work with an advisor, people are more likely to think that they have to have a specific amount of money in order to speak about finances and things like that, and learn about ways to invest and learn about ways to save. Um, and it's like, no, the financial education is out there. Where are you going to get it from? Right. And
Ooh, yes,
I
yes,
of, oh my gosh, who do I trust? Who do I speak to? Who's the professional? Who's not? Everybody, you could do your due diligence, right? Everybody knows I have conversations with people all the time regarding finances, right? It was hard for me in the beginning when I first started my business because they're like, oh, you a teacher, what you know about finances? And I'm like, you'll be amazed what I learned. Everything that you want is in a book. What I tell you, anything that you want to learn, you can find it in a book.
absolutely.
Start there, right? Start reading books because the information, 9 times out of 10, is in that book. You know, I told my son the other day, I was like, yo, what's the last book you read? And he's like, Mom, I didn't read a book. I'm like, oh no. If I send you the Art of War, are you gonna read it? And he's like,
Right,
I said, that's a life book. Like, yo, you have to
absolutely.
be reading to gain information and to gain knowledge. If you're not learning, you dying. I
I agree.
don't care what you read. I don't care if it's, I mean, I do care if it's a comic book, because he's in college now. But yo, read. That's my point.
Right,
Yo, if I
right.
send you this book, I need to know that you're gonna read this book. So anyway, that's a whole nother tangent. I could jump from um, but like I said, most of them, when it comes to like estate planning, there's just this false idea of I need to have a specific amount. I don't have an estate because I don't have thousands of dollars. No, your estate is your television, it's the pictures here on the wall, it's the computer, it's the sneakers you own. That
Absolutely.
of your estate. And I think, for Black folk, we just don't understand what it is, how the language works, and how to speak that language. And so, financial literacy advocate first and foremost, right? I always tell people, like, look, I serve, I don't sell. Like, you have to serve people first and let them know where you coming from. And you have definitely, Jeanette, I will tell you, you have served today, honey, because you hit on some golden nuggets and some ideas that even I hadn't really thought of, meaning the roles that, you know, like home ownership, right? The roles that it plays. We spoke about the names, we spoke about, it was so many different aspects to what's really holding us back. Like, oh,
Right,
we always got this uphill battle that we got to break down. Like, we always fighting. We got to always break down the barrier before we could get somewhere. And it's like, why are all these barriers in place anyway? What's the secret to what happens if Black people become the most wealthiest culture? Why is that why is there a we don't want that? No, no, no. Or do we just think that other people don't want us to be like that? What is it? What do you think?
well, if you look at, let's say, the 18th century, the 19th, well, a little bit of the 19th century, I mean, Africa was one of the richest countries in the world, right? Today, I think it's Venezuela because they sit on a massive, like a boatload of oil. Um, but I mean, these were natural resources, right? But we don't own the land.
Right.
How is it that we don't own the land?
Right.
So again, I feel like everyone outside of our race comes in because they already have the equity and they're able to make a profit off of us.
You spoke about representation in the financial industry. And you shared some statistics with me regarding it. What was the number? Was it 5%?
It's only 5% that we represent when it comes to financial representation, right? So, I mean, think about it. The last time you went to your bank, let's say now, and let's say a year prior, if you could look at or remember all of the faces of the staff in there, how many of them look like you?
Yeah, that would have to be back in my New York days. So that's over 13 years ago. And I don't think I've seen it more than 3 times since. So in 13 years, I probably haven't seen it more than 3 times. And that's kind
That
of
would be that would be incorporated with your
I'm
5%.
kind of like, oh, I'm saying it low, like, oh, it's kind of stretching it because was she black? Look, get into that, right? Like, maybe no, but I just, but yeah, you're right. Definitely underrepresented, underrepresented for sure. You know what? I'm trying to think. I want to ask you for people out there who they want to know about creating wealth, right? They want to know what steps does it take, but they also have a family, right? They have obligations, right? Because family could
Right.
want your own dependents, or you might have an elderly parent that you need to take care of, right? How do you think people, because obviously there's a pressure there, right? So how do you think people balance the pressures of supporting family, right? And those obligations and community while also building wealth for themselves? Is there a balance or is it always going to be off? What do you?
No, I don't think it's always going to be off because as you can see now in most recent years, uh I would look at the last 10 years, African Americans, people of color have definitely been more successful in achieving wealth,
Right.
right? And that's because our representation has increased a tad bit, right? Look at the judicial system. Our representation has increased a tad bit, right? The thing is that if a white man starts a race, and I mean that literally and figuratively, but if a white man starts a marathon, I'll use that word. If he starts a marathon at 6 o'clock in the morning and
Mhm.
he's able to complete 24 miles by 1 o'clock p.m., but we don't get a chance to start until 3 o'clock p.m. And we don't complete those 26 miles until the next day at 3 p.m., right? We're
Mm.
still a loser. We still lost that race. And I feel like we're so far behind, especially because of debt, especially because of the number of people in that household, right? Especially because of our health. I don't think that people take that into calculation that the government, and I mean this may be familiar to a lot of people, but the government looks at each household, obviously through the census,
Right.
but there are statistics as to health conditions and just how viable this individual is, right? So it's mother, father, daughter, sister, nephew, grandmother, whoever is in that household, whoever makes up that household. If you have health conditions based upon your neighborhood of high blood pressure, DM, diabetes type 1, type 2, you then are counted against someone who would be a viable candidate to actually produce or procure a six-figure position
Mm.
just based off of this statistic that you come from this neighborhood, you are more likely condemned to eat that same food that you grew up with, to have those same practices that you grew up with, right? Like, I think that there are gamuts of tangibles that affect the outcome of one person from that household, that it then becomes a cycle of behaviors that are repeated, right? Think about it. We grew up eating this cereal. We grew up drinking this milk. We grew up having this for dinner or for breakfast.
Right.
How many of us are still practicing those same meals,
Mm.
still buying the same products, right? Even though the government is forced to have health labels and ingredients on
Mm.
the back of this product, we're still purchasing it,
I was
right?
watching a video about that. What's her name? Connie, Kavi, something. I'm so terrible with names, but she just came to my I guess algorithm, right? And she's talking about the foods that we serve here in the United States versus the foods that are served in the UK. And she was having a rally because she was saying that she had the signatures needed, that she was gonna like hand deliver to Washington to say, yo, the same thing you serving overseas, why is America serving other countries better food than they serving us here? And I think you hit the nail on the head with, because it's profit here. If I feed them,
Absolutely.
right, if I feed them trash and they get sick, now that I got to charge them to get better, and it's more money to keep them sick than to not have them sick at all.
Everyone makes a profit off of impoverished communities, especially, specifically the government. And people don't realize that when you have a community where the median income is under $61,600, and that's what our median income is in these impoverished neighborhoods. Um, Again, you can then ask for more governmental assistance,
Right.
right? You don't have to pay the market rate when it comes to salaries, when it comes to hourlies, right? The health insurance that you provide these people is under these conditions of attributed factors, right? So, like, literally, these physicians are assigned to these low income areas. And this is a whole other conversation that you and I can have. But these physicians are assigned to these low income areas because there is a high volume of these comorbidities.
Mm.
And these physicians then have governmental contracts with these pharmacies to provide that medication for these comorbidities, right? Like, and that's a whole other arm of the body that you can just completely go off on.
Listen, this topic, it stretches far and wide, and all the connections between it, it's all linked together,
Absolutely.
all linked together. And it's like, we as Black people, and we're going to touch on each of these topics, but we need to ask these. Basically, it's like the 5 questions, right? I keep forgetting if I put my hands up, but the 5 questions become like, what is the link with mass incarceration, right? What is the link to Black genocide? What is the link to even like the foods and things like that that we eat, right? What is the link to the miseducation, right? Or the education? I don't even want to call it miseducation anymore, because to some degree, a little bit of it is probably intentional at this point, right?
Absolutely.
It's not the miseducation, it is the education in which we are receiving, right? So, and of course, financial literacy or having access to wealth. So these are the 5 things that I think um Black Americans should question all the time. What is our role? Where are we with it? And how does it impact ourselves and our communities and our families and things like that? So um I don't know. This has been a totally dope conversation. Um, I don't know. I'm with that last comment that you made right there. I'm just like, mic drop. Like, I'm ready for the next conversation. Like, that was a cue. It's because now I want to go there, but I'm not gonna go there. So, what are your final thoughts on financial literacy impact? I love the nuggets that you shared about what we can do, and I'd love for you to share them again, for people who may just be getting in or didn't quite get them down the first time, just kind of go over it one more time. What are the things that we can do now intentionally to gain access to wealth or to help circulate the dollars in our communities more than that one time?
So a few things that I would recommend people to do, and again, you can start today. Don't think that you need a hefty surplus of money. Don't wait for your income taxes to do this. You can start today. Um, just a little bit of food for thought. I wanted to say this as well before I forgot. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes. For every $100 in wealth by white people, Black households only hold $15.
Say that again.
For every $100 held by white people, Black households only hold $15. The percentage distribution of household income in the United States, and this is from 2022 to 2023.
Listen, that's why when I say to people, let me get $20, they like, I ain't got it. They only got 15.
Exactly.
Not to
So
that
no,
like
but it's the truth. It's the truth, right? So what I would recommend people to do is one, empower local people and places. So if you know of someone who is working in a neighborhood, someone who is maybe part-time, right? Again, we talked about representation. Let's circulate that dollar. For me, that has become like my mantra. How can I circulate this dollar so that my community is flourishing, right? When you have a flourishing community, it attracts franchisers, which is not always a great thing, but this is how gentrification comes into place. And that too is government plotted. Um, Increase local ownership. So we grew up with mom and pop stores. You don't really see those anymore. But if you know of people who own their business, who have a storefront, people who are within that community, people who live within that community, circulate that dollar. Increase local prosperity and opportunities. If you hear of a job fair, if you have a lead, if you know of a headhunter, if you know of a place that is looking to hire and recruit, pass the word along, blast it, share it, DM it to anybody and everybody that you know. Like, let's start using our social media so that it not only propagates our community to flourish, but also like helps us to start to centralize networking, right? Which is something that's extremely pivotal when it comes to building a community. Financial power, working for local places, right? So your beauty salon in your neighborhood, make sure you support it, right? Like maybe even host a networking event where you bring all of these local business owners to a central area and then maybe have a discussion similar to Tia Talks,
damn.
right? um Anchor businesses and jobs to places, right? So like let's say for example, this is your local clinic. Well, how can you get your clinic to then become a partner or a sponsor for your bank, right? How can you get the two of them to have some kind of partnership? That way your community is thriving. It only takes one person to start these conversations.
Right.
And then lastly, strengthen local communities. How can you do that? Maybe have a farmer's market, right? All you have to do is call up your local farms. They're not that far away, believe it or not, right? Like call them up, have them come to a central area, and then be able to bring out other people, right? Again, that's another networking possibility. If it is a church, if it is a sporting event, right? Use these opportunities to plug in financial literacy.
Right.
We have majors and minors in school for public administration, but do you ever see public health advocates in the public?
Hmm.
And so you have individuals who are going to school for, majors in economics, but do you ever see an economic advocate in the public? So you start there with those 6 items. You can then build, teach, and grow by flourishing your community. And it takes one of us to start, but all of us to finish.
Yeah, listen. Right? Yo, Jeanette, again, this has been a dope conversation. I definitely appreciate you showing some love. I can't wait to our next conversation because baby, they get and I'm loving all of it. Um, wow. I'm like blown away. I'm excited. Like I don't even know what to say out loud because I'm feeling and I'm wondering like, well, Tia, what can you do? Right? I'm trying to think, well, where have I been slipping or lacking? Where I've been slacking at in my own community to make sure that my voice is heard. How can I make sure that my dollars are circulating in Black communities, right? And what can I do, right? Like what I'm about to go to the drawing board. Like, okay, what's next here? What can you do? Let me make that list I was talking about earlier, right? If you want to know
Oh,
what
yeah.
do, right? Do what they do. If you want to know what poor people do the opposite of them. And so I think you gave great examples. Love the nuggets that you dropped.
Well,
Cool.
thank you for having me. And you're doing it right now, Tia, by having this platform to have these conversations because this is not something that we grew up hearing our parents discuss, right? And think about it. We are in a recession.
Mm,
You have our parents who were born out of the Great Depression, who are familiar with the Great Depression. And so, of course, the dollar was worth so much more back then, and it was able to sustain a household of four. Today, that dollar does not have the same money power, right? So, what can we do as this generation passing it along to the next generation where we can educate them on financial literacy and savviness?
yo, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Tia Talks. It's your girl, Sugar Free Tea. Till next time, talk to you guys soon. Have a good one. Later.
Bye.
Thank you, Jeanette.